Hi, this is Roy Collin of Speaking Podcast, and welcome to episode number 12. This week I was speaking to Mariusz Sokolowicz, who I know for about 10 years. He's the Vice Dean of the local university, and he travels all around Europe to the different universities, so he's got plenty of speaking engagements. But also he was working for the local council and would have had experience talking with on TV and radio, and he delves into that. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Make sure that you subscribe, and if you like it, give us a 5-star rating and share with your friends. And remember, each episode is different, so if you're new to the podcast, go back and listen to the episodes from the very start. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube, Speaking Podcast, and our website is speakingpodcast.com. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, this is Roy Collin of the Speaking Podcast. I'm here with Mariusz Sokolowicz, who is a good friend of mine. He's actually the Vice Dean of the local university. And why I've asked him to talk to us today is because he'd have experience with teaching, but also he's experience working with the city government, so between talking and to the press and everything. So welcome, Mariusz.
Hello everybody.
So let us know your journey. When you were younger, your speaking journey.
Yes, I try to explain it somehow. As far as my speaking experience is concerned, I think that I was learning mostly by myself, like on my own, really. Never working with professionals, except listening to some podcasts how to do it sometimes, maybe. But generally speaking, I did it myself. I did it by practice. Maybe it's a little because of my attitude to such things and my character. I was never afraid of speaking publicly. But maybe it was also because of the kind of work I do. Because I work in the university. My history was I just finished the studies and I got a proposal to make a PhD at my university, so I stayed at the university. And quite quickly I had to learn how to teach students. And because I had to do it by myself, actually, with very little help from the other people from the university, like the older ones, I just had to learn by myself how to do it in the interesting way, because it's not a problem to make some kind of notes and make a lecture for students just reading this. So I always trying not to do that. I always trying to rather speak than read something from the papers I have, from the notes I have. So this is, let's say, the beginning of my journey. Except some small things that happens maybe in the high school or in the primary school, when once or two times maybe I make a small performance as a child, for the parents, for something like this. So I think it doesn't really count. What really counts it's my work at the university, and that was the beginning. So because I had to, I started to speak publicly to different groups, group of 5 people, 15 people, and more people, like also 100. And because I was doing it a lot, I think it was a good practice. I think what is interesting from my point of view, for me there was never a difference between speaking to the group of 15 people or the group of 100 people. I don't know why, but it never was a problem for me. What was later? Later, as you mentioned, I was cooperating with the local government, but firstly it was rather as working even not a civil servant, like cooperating with some NGOs and doing many things for the city, like engaging myself in the social issues, urban social issues. It was like this, that because my specialization at the university is about urban economics, it corresponds directly to governing the city, to governing everything that is public in the city. And it was the time, more or less 2007, 2008, when here in Poland and in Łódź, when we are now in the city, there was a problem of some kind of crisis of the town center. It was because of many reasons, and it happened not only in Lodz, but in many other large Polish cities also. Because of the suburbanization, I mean, more and more people buying properties and buying houses around the city, more and more people stopped to live in the town center and started to live outside the city, which is normal for many cities. It's like this urban life cycle, let's call it. At the same time, more and more shopping malls were opening in the city. And the main street in Łódź, Piotrkowska Street, got a crisis because of that. Because the shops that were on that street stopped operating, moved to these shopping malls, or moved to the places closer to these people in the suburbs. And together with the other surrounding areas around this main street, the Piotrkowska Street, it started to be visible. Like more and more empty shops, for example, the quality of public space going down, not interesting from the aesthetic point of view, advertisement, etc. And because it happens not only, as I said before, in Lodz, it started to happen in other large cities. It happened 10 years before also in the UK, in Ireland, in France, so in Western Europe. There are many people trying to deal with this in somehow scientifically. I mean, to try the reasons of this and to try the solutions how to revitalize these city centers to make them attractive for people again. And me with the group of people started to do the same in the city of Lodz. In the meantime, because I was in the university, I was doing a lot of things with students, but not only in the terms making lectures, making like a regular job on the university, but I was working with the student association. People also doing such a things in the city. So not only studying, but also trying to change the city they study for real. And we, for example, make a very big research on the image of the city of Lodz. Just asking people what they like in Lodz, what they don't like in Lodz, are they planning to move away from the city after graduation, or are they planning to stay in the city, etc. And it was like in the sphere in the field of the urban marketing. So we make a big research sample of something like few thousand students, because students were the respondents in this research, and we try to publish this. I mean, not to write a research paper that just 10 people read and put it to the bin, but do it in the more, let's say, modern way. Just to go to the local TV, to go to the local radio, etc. Just to sell the effects of our research to the public. And all these things, like teaching, cooperating with students, making this research, and also dealing with the town center, like with trying to revitalize town center, make me cooperating a little with local media, because the journalists noticed that there's interesting research. There's like a young PhD guy dealing with students, making this research. He's also trying to do something for the Piotrkowska Street, the main street of Lodz, so this revitalization stuff. And they started to invite me and also a few other people to make some kind of interviews, both in TV and in the radio. So it was the next stage, like learning to speak publicly to the local media. I think, again, I was doing it by myself. I was learning just by doing.
And would you watch? Would you watch back and see what you done wrong to improve? How were you?
Yes. I know that there are people that hate doing this. For me, it was not a problem. Sometimes, of course, it's not that I'm listening to myself and I'm happy, because it's not like this. But it's not a problem for me to listen to what I've said, how I look when I speak, etc. So yes, I was doing this. So it was like some kind of auto feedback, just trying to watch back what I was speaking in TV, or in the radio, and trying to improve myself by listening back what I've told before, for sure. So this is again like practicing by myself mostly. And what is let's say a key to success? I think it's mainly, I don't know. I think mainly it's the number of, let's say, of these small interviews I've done, the number of lectures I've done to students. There were thousands of lectures. I don't know if you know the Malcolm Gladwell, who is a journalist from the New Yorker, a very famous one. He used to write few books, and one of these books was about what decides about making you expert. And he said that to become an expert, you have to practice at least 10,000 hours in your life, whatever you do. You know, if you want to be a football player, you must to practice for 10,000 hours to be a football player. If you are a singer, he gave an example of Beatles, the Beatles group, that they practiced 10,000 hours before they became famous, blah 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 blah. But I think it works. Of course, it's not exactly 10,000 hours, but it's still practicing. It's like everything, like learning language. It's like being a sportsman. It's like being a scientist. It's like being a spokesman. It's the same. You have to practice. So I think I was practicing, and this is the main key to success in my case. Of course, I do a lot of mistakes because, as I mentioned before, I never do it with professional care. I mean, no one helped me. 1 or 2 times I was on some kind of workshops helping to improve my way of, let's say, selling the effects of my work, mainly the scientific one, because there's also something that develops. Maybe I will speak about it a little bit later. So I'm aware of the mistakes I do, and for sure I wouldn't like the people who are going to listen to this podcast to think that it's really possible that you can do it really by yourself. I did it with a little help of the other people, mainly of the experts, but it doesn't mean that I think that's the only way to be an expert. No, it's better to have someone who advises you. My case was special. It was not fully free of experts. As I mentioned, few times I had some kind of feedback also from the experts. Even when I mentioned about going to the local TV or to the local radio to make a speech or to give some kind of interview, there were also journalists giving me some feedback on this. So it's also quite important thing. I think it's like this.
And on the because they're both different, radio and TV. Is there any kind of tips you can share with us for when you are on the TV?
I can try. First of all, of course, it will be quite obvious thing. Try not to be stressed. I know it's hard, but I told before that I am a kind of person that for me it doesn't make any difference if I speak to 5 people or 10 people or 100 people, or I speak to radio and to the TV, so the wider audience. But I know that there are people who are a little bit afraid of this. The growing number of the potential listeners make them more stressed. So the first advice would be try not to be stressed so much. Even maybe paradoxically, speaking to 5 people, sometimes it's much more difficult than speaking to, for example, 200 people. Because, when you speak publicly, you are stressed a little. You are thinking what people think about you. But think about these people in the audience. It's exactly the same. They will not start asking you very complicated questions because they are also afraid to ask you the questions, to give you some kind of feedback, etc. So always remember about this. When you speak with the group of 5 people or 3 people, they will be always more encouraged to answer you or to give you sometimes very strong feedback, sometimes not good for you. So first tip would be not be so stressed of the wider audience. The other tip, I think quite important, is try to be quite, let's say, consistent with the idea I want to pass to people. Usually, it's especially the case of people being experts in somewhere. They are being invited to radio or TV as an expert. People, journalists, start to ask a lot of questions. Try being an expert, not to answer as an expert too much. Not to use the expert language too much, to complicate it, for example. Remember that when you speak to very wide audience, this audience is very differentiated in terms of what kind of people are listening. If you are speaking to students, you know they are students. If you are speaking to the group of people over 80, you know you are speaking to this kind of people. When you are speaking to, you exactly don't know who is going to listen to the podcast, to the radio, to the TV. We are speaking to very, very differentiated group of people. So your information, your message should be, let's say, average a little, to even not a little, just being understandable to the average recipient of this kind of message. So this is, I think, quite important. Try to put your message or to pass your message through the media in a way that will be very, very understandable to the wider audience. How to do it? Sometimes when I speak to students, it's also about writing, not about speaking only, but it's also about speaking. I don't know, something normal situation in the university. There is some complicated issue concerning, I don't know, for example, the real estate economics. Let's say it's this kind of course. And students are supposed to make some kind of 50-minute speech on one element of this urban economics. For example, how people buy and sell houses, whatever. So they have to make presentation. Of course, different students make it in a different way. I always try to say to students that they are not making presentation for me. I say to them, imagine that, for example, you are preparing presentation about urban economics or real estate economics to someone that doesn't have any idea about urban economics. For example, you live in the dorm, I ask, in the dorm. Some students answer yes. So probably in the dorm you live, there are some people as you, being students of the Faculty of Economics, and there are some students being specialists or studying chemistry or music or whatever. So imagine that your colleague from your room, or your roommate from the dorm, is a chemistry guy, for example. Try to explain what are you doing as you were doing this to chemistry guy. And this sometimes helps. When you know that you are not talking about special things to the specialist, but talking about special things to the people who are not a specialist in some issue, it makes making this message sometimes easier. So I think
that's a great message, because I see with a lot of scientists, when they're trying to get their message out, they're talking in scientific language, or doctors in medical language, and they're not hitting the masses. They're only kind of speaking to, their profession when they're trying to reach the masses.
You're totally right, and this is the next thing I would like to tell you to you and to the world through this podcast. I thought a little bit about me taking part in some small number of workshops on giving messages or public speaking, but concerning the science. Let's say science. This is my academic specialization, and it was this few number of workshops was on this. Like there is, let's say, a small market that is growing. There are firms specializing in teaching people from the academia how to sell. I put this sell, of course, as some kind of quotation. To sell the message from the academia in a way which is more marketized, let's see, in a marketing way, in more attractive way. Of course, I must say it, not everyone, not every doctor and every professor is able to do it, because I can imagine many, astronomists, for example, being very specialized in observing new stars on the sky and being really not able to speak about this publicly. But some of them, the other, can be very good at this. So some people in the academia try to specialize in this, and there are even special films already all over the world, also in Poland, teaching people, academia people, how to do it. And one of the first tips they do to these academia people, some of them are the same as I did, the same tip as I gave to you. It's like try to make this message understandable. But there are also other different tips. For example, make the structure of this message in a good way. For example, before you start talking, what are you doing in your research? Tell people why are you doing this, what is the problem you want to solve, and how can help people in practice, for example. So yes, this I know that it's still the beginning of the journey. I mean, in the academia, that still a lot of academia people are very hermetic, but it changes. And more and more universities, including my university, University of Lodz, have very specialized marketing people trying to help academia people to sell the message, the scientific message, in a more attractive way. When you go, on the YouTube and put the University of Lodz, you will open the channel, and for example, you can see up to this time it's probably like 30-40 small movies of single people talking in quite attractive way what they are studying from the various fields: economics, sociology, chemistry, medicine, etc., etc. There are also more and more comments of what's happening in the world, or in the city, for example, or in Poland, and also the comments are in the way that they are rooted a little bit in the theory. Like this, some representative on the university says, yes, according to theory, what happened, I don't know, for example, on the stock market in Poland, in Warsaw, was according to the theory, against the theory, and then explains why. And more people have the ability to do it in a way that the other will understand this. So this is, I think, something that develops. Which means that doesn't matter where you work, you can try developing the skills of speaking publicly in an attractive way. And it concerns also academia. I think it would be nice if these public speaking messages would be more, let's say, widespread and popular also among in this other field of my activity, which is in the urban development issues, but not from the scientific point of view, but from the practical point of view. Because, as I mentioned, I'm cooperating with some NGOs, with some, we call it urban movements, trying to make a city a more attractive place to live, which means many issues. For example, it's about making some kind of bottom-up lobby to the local government to make the urban amenities, which means everything that surrounds the place you live, more attractive, to make the pavements being clean and nice, to have more greenery in the city, to fight with the smog and the other kind of air pollution, to eliminate some cars from the streets and promote the other ways of transport, for example, the bike transport, pedestrian transport, public transport, etc. So there are many things like this. To convince people living in the city that is important for their life, for the quality of life, it's very important. But many people who do it also need to develop the ability of public speech, to, let's say, to borrow some techniques of public speaking of the local politicians, because local politicians are great in this, and local activists are not so great in this. That's why they lose the elections, probably. What I would like in the next this close next future, it's to try to convince people dealing with the urban development issues in the practical way, to be able to convince the citizens, the urban citizens, to their ideas how the city should function. It's like this.
Okay. And you mentioned as well speaking on radio. What tips would you give for when it's just on the radio and not on television?
First of all, of course, it's obvious that the only thing there's in that you can get in the radio is the voice. So you must concentrate more on doing less lingual mistakes, because it's very, even not visible but heardable by the people who listen to the radio. The very important thing is to try to have the way of speaking very clear. For many people it's not so easy, so some people need for sure some practicing before going to the radio to be, let's say, to be understandable, but in a way that they are heard, they are being heard by the people. Some tip would be similar, like with the TV, like don't care too much. I know it's hard, but don't care too much of how many people will listen to you. Concentrate more on your speech, not of. I mean, you should know who is listening to you, and you should take care about this audience, but don't count this audience. Don't think that there are a million people listening to it. Just try to concentrate here and now on the recording in the radio, or sometimes live, just speaking with someone. And the other thing is, I know it's a tip or not, maybe it is. Try to really listen, or maybe this listening to I wanted to say about that we should concentrate of the questions that are being asked by the journalists, but it's let's say quite obvious.
Well, no, I've actually seen people that they've been brilliant speakers, but when you do there's some projects where you're interviewing, and they weren't able to listen to the questions properly because they were thinking in their head what they're going to say next. So I think it's actually a valid point.
Yes, for sure. For some people, it's a problem. For some people, it's a problem that they have some kind of message, like it seems like learned by heart. It doesn't matter what was the question, the answer is the same. Again, local politicians and every politicians are very good on this. But of course, the way you speak also depends of the type of audition. Some audition you are play with emotion, in the other you must be more professional, more expert. So you should also know that it's not like TV is TV and radio is radio. When you go to the radio, you should prepare also in a way that you should know what kind of audition it is. Sometimes it's a short one, sometimes a long one. So this is, you should know when you are prepared for the show one, you shouldn't speak and speak and speak. You know that it will be cut very quickly. Some auditions are just a news type, so just tell some information, for example, about event you're preparing and radio men or women invited you to speak about this. Some are to discuss, to comment some problem. So you should know why are you going to the radio. What's the reason? What type of audition you're going to take part? It's also
Have you had a situation where it wasn't live radio, but they edited it to change the context of what you were saying? Has that happened to you?
Sometimes it happened, but it happened quite rarely in case when I went to the studio to the interview to talk to the journalist. It happens more often when I was working in the city hall for this city center revitalization Piotrkowska Street. I had also many speeches, recorded somewhere in the public space. Like someone calls you and says, I know we are preparing something on the Piotrkowska Street, for example, some kind of event. I would like you to tell some few things, or something bad happened. You have to comment this. and they ask you to comment it very quickly to TV or to the radio. Usually it lasts maximum 3-5 minutes, but then it goes to the news just for 10 seconds. And yes, then it's very possible that the context will be cut, and it's very hard to give a tip how to avoid this. You must be really quite professional. You know that your message must be very clear. When it's clear, it's not possible to cut it so much, but it's something that you have to learn by practice. It's not very easy to learn this.
And I think people should actually, when they are having interviews, to record it, so that if they do twist it, which happens a lot, that you've got the full recording yourself, because they're not going to give it to you, and then you can actually take action on it if need be.
You mean just for improving yourself? No,
I mean that if you're talking on the radio and they blow it out of context and they try to make you look bad when you're giving a good point, that you have a recording yourself, so that if need be, you have a backup that so you can defend yourself if they try to spin it.
Maybe it's a good way, but frankly speaking, it happens not so often. Last time, sometimes in Polish public TV it happens, but it can happen 1-2 times, and then no TV station, no radio station will be perceived as a reliable when they start to do it all the time. Yeah. So it's like in Poland we say kłamstwo ma krótkie nogi, so the lie has short legs. Yeah. You cannot like this, especially being a radio station, because you go out of the market very quickly. Mm. So I wouldn't be afraid so much of this. Of course, when something like this happens, there is a problem, but you can record on your phone the whole interview, of course, but I think that from the moral and from the legal point of view, you should inform the interviewer that you are doing this actually. Maybe too. This is also quite important, because the journalist also can say that he or she didn't know that you are recording them, and then you are against the law. It's quite complicated in practice in real life, but it works like this. Nevertheless, I recommend practicing public speech also through the media. It's a little bit different, or maybe even a lot different than going on the stage and speak publicly. You have to prepare it in a little bit different way to such a speaking, but gives you the possibility to give a feedback, because you can download what you have said and see in the TV or hear in the radio what you did, so you can use it also for learning for the future. So this is good. And of course, after 5, 6, 7 times of doing this, you are getting more and more practice, and I think the practice you get makes you better for the next public speeches, not only in the radio and TV, but also in the public speeches on the stage. So this is for sure. At the beginning it's very stressful, but when you cope with this, it gives you a lot of advantage. So I recommend.
I think your point about Malcolm Gladwell and the 10,000 hours. I mean, not necessarily 10,000 hours, but I think the more stage time you get, the better. Just
for
keep
sure.
practicing.
For sure. The same is about singers. They are the people at the bands. They are giving a lot of concerts. They are really good at this, because most of them, before they started to give this concert of big stadiums, they are doing thousands of hours playing in the small clubs, and then they had possibility to practice. So this is for sure the starting point. To practice a lot.
Exactly. So listen, it's been fantastic. You've given some brilliant advice. How can people get in contact with you if they're interested in what you're doing?
Through the social media, like the Facebook portal, for example, or through through you, for example, you can give my email. Yeah. Not a problem.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. See you. Bye.
So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed listening to Mariusz and all the advice that he gave. So, as I mentioned at the start, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube, Speaking Podcast. Our website is speakingpodcast.com. Be sure to share with your friends if you think they could benefit from public speaking, and we would greatly appreciate a 5-star rating on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever your platform you listen to. So until next week, have a great time.